Hello, in this video I will show you some populations that are close to me in G25, and the reason I'm showing this is to deliver a point, really. I have a specific, agenda. I have a specific point that I'm trying to make, and I will use this to make this point, okay? So let's go. So we see the closest population to me is Russians from Tver, not surprising at all. Out of the populations I selected, I only selected 18 populations. So then it is Moksha. After Moksha it's Ryazan and Yaroslavl Russians, then it's Erzya. Moksha is actually among the closest populations to me out of all populations on G25. It is closer to me than most Russians, except Russians from Tver. So I just wanted to show that here. Erzya is quite distant from me. And as you can see, I'm very close to these Uralic speaking Moksha people of Russia. Closer than I am to East Ukrainians. You can see Dnipro over here. I'm not very close to Ukrainians from Dnipro. Closer than to West Ukrainians from Rivne. But I am closer to these Ukrainians than to Estonians, Central Finns, Karelians, Komi. But this is what's interesting, right? Because you could argue that I am very Moksha in my genetics. I am very similar to these Uralic speaking Mokshas. But am I Uralic? Am I really a Uralic person? Well, you can look at this. I'm close to these Estonians and Central Finns and Karelians and Komis. They are Uralic speaking people. But I am also close to English. And I am also quite close to Spanish from Andalusia, from the very south of Spain. I am closer to people from the very south of Spain than I am to Udmurts. And Udmurts are not even fully Uralic. Udmurts are mostly Indo-European. They are among the most Yamnaya, the most Western steppe herder people in the world. They are very Indo-European. But they have a little bit of Uralic blood, right? And I am closer to all of these people. I'm closer to people from Dagestan than I am to Maris. And Maris are also not fully Uralic. Maris have a lot of Indo-European blood too. And when you look at the distance from me to Mansi, which are actually Uralic people, it's a huge distance. It's a huge distance. I am 2.5 times closer to southern Spanish people than I am to Mansi. That's insane, that's crazy, right? Because Mansi are right there in Russia, and Spanish people are all the way in the southwest of Europe, right? I am 2 times closer, well not 2, but 1.5 times closer to Spanish people from Andalusia than I am to Mari. And that's very interesting because from the 16th century onwards, my mother's side of the family has been living in the Republic of Mariel and south of Kirov Oblast, very much that region. I could go to, if you look at the villages my ancestors come from, the neighboring villages would have Maris living there. And yet, I am closer to people from the south of Spain than to these Maris. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So yes, I'm actually not a very Uralic person at all. I'm a very Indo-European person. Even though my closest population speaks a Uralic language, Moksha, they speak a Uralic language. Just because they speak a Uralic language doesn't mean they are Uralic. It really doesn't mean that. And the genetics speak for themselves. You see, I'm very close to English. I am closer to English than to Udmurts. I am closer to English, obviously, than to Mansi. The genetics speak for themselves, really. A Moksha doesn't look the same as a Finn. A Moksha does not look the same as an Estonian. A Moksha does not look the same, obviously, as a Udmurt or a Mari. And obviously, they don't look the same as a Mansi. The appearances speak for themselves. The genetics speak for themselves. Uralic people are not a monolith. And in fact, most Uralic people in Europe are very Indo-European. And they have only a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of Uralic ancestry. If a Finnish person were to do a similar G25 closest populations thing, for them, the southern Spanish people from Andalusia would also be closer than Udmurts and Mari and Mansi people. I don't know about the Komi, but they would be closer to them than Udmurts and Mari and Mansi. Finnish people are more related, even Eastern Finnish people are more related to southern Spaniards than they are to Udmurts, Mari, Mansi and the like. And actually the Udmurts are more related to Russians and people like me than they are to Mansi. And Mari are also closer to I am sure they are closer to Russians and to Europeans, Indo-Europeans in general, than they are to actual Uralics like Mansi. And even Mansi are not exactly fully Uralic. Mansi have a lot of Indo-European ancestry. They are like a third steppe herder. They have something like a third of steppe herder ancestry. So they are not fully Uralic either. All these people, all these Uralics in Europe, they are really just Indo-Europeans. That's what they are. They are just Indo-Europeans that transferred to a language from the East, but their male haplogroups are also from the East, but that doesn't mean much, because when you look at them, you can see that they belong in Europe. You can see that they are Indo-Europeans. They are Europeans. They are like us. When you look at their genetics, their autosomal DNA, they are like us. It is what it is. They're not Asiatic. There is no, and yeah, that's the point I was trying to make here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.